Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I've been recently contacted by a couple of young individuals looking to start a tackle company. They do a lot of kind of garage shop type stuff right now, and they're looking to try to take it to the next level. So they reached out to me knowing that I'm with Core Tackle and just wanted to ask me a bunch of questions regarding, how to go about kind of taking what they do for themselves and making it more of a business to make some money, with the hopes that maybe it takes off and they can become a bigger brand in the fishing industry. So they contacted me asking for some advice. They had a bunch of different questions, and ultimately it led me to think that this could be a good topic, just from the standpoint of there probably are a lot of individuals out there that are potentially trying to figure out how to make some money selling some of their baits. I don't think it's unusual at all in the fishing industry. In fact, I would say that the majority of us anglers out there have tinkered in some form or fashion with custom built stuff, whether they pour their own jig heads, whether they pour their own plastics. Maybe it's just building spinner baits or adding components to existing baits that they purchased in the store. The reality is, we all have a little bit of customization to the baits. And from that standpoint, some of us really enjoy that. Some of us take it to the next level and, look to sell some of the stuff that they make. In my case, I've done everything from pouring my own jig heads to tying my own skirts to building spinner baits to, custom painting my baits to building my own rods that I use today. So I've kind of done everything. The only thing I haven't done is shoot plastics. That's the one thing that I haven't done. And I don't really want to get into that right now, just from the standpoint of I think I would probably fall head over heels in love with it, knowing that I could make crazy colors and do whatever it is that I wanted. The reality is there's a lot of different things that are out there that companies can try to capitalize on if they want. But ultimately, some of the advice that I gave these individuals came down to, what I think has worked for Core Tackle. It doesn't mean it's the only way to start a company, uh, but I think there's some value in it. So one of the first and most important things I think is innovation. I really feel like in today's fishing world, innovation is very key. And the reason for that is it really helps you set yourself apart from the other companies that are out there. So in our case with Core Tackle, we definitely are not looking to create another round ball jig head. We're not looking to do things that other people are doing. We're trying to create things that we feel like fill voids or help certain techniques or correct problems. And from that standpoint, I feel like if you can do that, it sets you apart from some of the other products that are on the market. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just, say, design a bait or the look of bait. It could be the movement that the bait has. It could be offering colors that other companies don't offer. Obviously it can be design. It's just there's a lot of different ways to separate your product from other people's products. But in my opinion, innovation is the easiest way to separate yourself from some of the existing stuff that's out there. Meaning, if you want to go make spinner baits, you can do it, but it's harder to sell a spinner bait that's like all of the other brands of spinner baits out there. It's harder to get somebody who already owns 20 spinner baits to purchase your spinner bait just because it catches fish. Like you gotta be able to convince somebody to get it and to purchase it first. And a lot of times it's the design or innovation or the things about your product that separates you from some of the competition that's out there. So that would be the first thing I'd say is innovation is definitely your friend. It doesn't mean you have to do that, right? There are ways to pour your own jig heads and sell your jig heads, at a price that gets you an advantage over the competition. It's just harder to, in my opinion, to go that route. The other thing I would say is you should try to fill a need if you can. So if you can identify a need in your area, meaning maybe maybe there's no local tackle shops around a lake, and you know that you can set up a shop pouring jig heads locally and sell them at the boat ramp. Like that, there could be a need for that in your area. People aren't able to drive to a local bait shop. So if you're a garage shop maker and you just want to pour the most basic jig heads and you set up shop at the bait at a local boat ramp, you can do that. But if you can fill a need, if there's a demand for something out there that you identify and you can satisfy that, I think that gives you a leg up as well. And that could be, anything from a technique. So you figure out a better way to do a Carolina rig. Well, there's probably a need for that, right? There's a lot of Carolina rig fishermen out there. Like I said, it could be location based. So maybe you identify a color that works better to mimic blueback herring and blueback herring lakes, and you can capitalize on that. There's just if you can identify a need and figure out how to satisfy that need, you're probably going to separate yourself a little bit from the competition as well. Another thing that I definitely run into quite a bit with core tackle is figuring out a way to make it cost effective. It's a lot easier, I think, for bigger shops that have all of resources at their fingertips to figure out ways to make things more cost effective. I've got a lot of these cool ideas and things that I've explored, but I just can't figure out a way to make them cost effective. Meaning, I don't wanna offer you guys something that's gonna cost me $30 to sell or to make, and therefore I'm selling it for $40, right? From that standpoint, I just don't wanna come out with a product that's so overly priced that it just doesn't make sense to make. It's just you gotta figure out a way to make it cost effective, and there is a range, I feel like, within prices that are justifiable. So if you can figure that out, that's always beneficial. Another thing would be just figuring out production. It's one thing to do it all in your garage. It's another thing to grow it to a point where all of a sudden you can't handle that demand. So you kind of want to figure out different ways to do that. And some of it's not necessarily production of it's too much capacity for you to handle. Some of it's just you're not able to do it in your garage. For example, if you want to do tungsten, you're not going to be pouring tungsten in your garage. So you got to figure out ways to do the production, which can be overwhelming. And at the same time, that can become extremely costly, especially if you're only looking at doing a few jig heads. For most of that stuff, you're looking at putting in major orders, which again are limiting from a money standpoint, limiting from a sales standpoint. It's just something that you need to take into account. So, your production is definitely something. And I guess I would say that one of the most important things is make a product that you want to use. If you're not using the product, and you don't feel confident in the product, you probably shouldn't be trying to sell it. And I see this a lot with garage shop makers. I mean, I know a local person that pours all these plastics. They just make a ton of plastics, and I see them fishing, and they're not even using their own plastics. They sell soft stick baits and craws and all this various stuff. But then when the tournaments come around, they're not throwing their own products. So from my standpoint, I see that and I'm like, I don't know how you're selling those products if you're not comfortable enough to use them in local tournaments. So I think it's critical for a tackle company, tackle builder, that if they're looking to sell products, they should have confidence in their products because I think that's a major function. I mean, you guys see me using core tackle stuff pretty much routinely in my tournaments, my Wednesday night tournaments, and my fun fishing. Like they're pretty much taking over my tackle box, and it's not because I think that's all I need to use because it's core tackle. It's because I feel like I have satisfied concerns or issues that I had with certain techniques by building these products, and therefore they filled that void. And now I choose to use them because I think they're better than what I was using before. So if you're not comfortable with that, I would have a hard time selling products to the general public because I don't feel like you're going to succeed if you're not even using the product. I could be wrong in that, but that's just kind of my opinion. So there's a lot of different ways to go about starting a tackle company, but ultimately I do feel like it comes down to your products. You need to understand, are your products is your company based more off your products, or is your company based more off price? And I think if you can develop products that the consumers want and need, and you're able to promote it and share that story, that there's probably a good chance of making some money doing it. And, again, well, I'm not saying necessarily making a giant brand out of it, but if you're looking to maybe pay for your entry fees in your local tournaments by making baits in your garage 1 day a week, I think it's very doable. I really do. And I definitely think that a lot, if you were to talk to a lot of bait companies out there, I think a lot of them started as a garage shop, and they probably started selling to their local community, and the baits worked, and just the word kind of spreads and it gets out there. So I wouldn't be concerned at all about starting small. In fact, I think that's a great way to grow. You don't want to start too big because then you take on too much risk, and it's just harder to sell that story to more people. But I definitely think it's a good thing to do. I think it's an enjoyable thing to do, and it's exciting. And when you're completely head over heels in love with the sport of fishing, it makes common sense, in my opinion, for somebody to take on that tackle craft type approach and turn that into something that can generate a few dollars for them. So I'd say go for it. There's no reason not to do it, and there's a lot of positive things to it. So hopefully this helps. I don't know. Like I said, I had the conversations I had were pretty in depth, pretty detailed, and it just was one of those things where I know there's a lot of people out there doing it. Because for me, I can't tell you the number of times I thought about it. Going all the way back to in my late teens to now when I'm in my early 40s, and from that standpoint, there was a lot of thinking about it, a lot of baits that I kind of would sell here and there, but I never really took it to the point of starting a company. And I kind of wish now I had started earlier. I think maybe I'd be a little bit further along at this point in it. But the reality is, I know there's a lot of other tackle crafters out there, and from that standpoint, they're thinking about it too. So hopefully, this was helpful. I say go for it. You only live life once, take the risk. The worst thing that happens is you end up with a bunch of baits for you to use for the rest of your life. Huh. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate all you out there. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new one coming out tomorrow.